If you've only been watching English-language horror, you're missing some of the most extraordinary filmmaking the genre has ever produced. International horror operates without the constraints of Hollywood conventions. Different cultures, different fears, different storytelling traditions. And the result is some of the most original, most unsettling, and most genuinely surprising horror cinema in existence. Today we're looking at 10 essential international horror films from around the world. Argentina, South Korea, Japan, Thailand, the Netherlands, Denmark and Spain. Let's get into it. The Vanishing, 1988, Netherlands. The Vanishing's one of the most psychologically disturbing films ever made. And it achieves that entirely without violence or gore. A man becomes obsessed with finding out what happened to his girlfriend who disappeared at a rest stop. What makes The Vanishing so extraordinary is its structure. It gives you information in a way that creates a uniquely unbearable kind of dread. George Sluicer's direction is precise and deeply unsettling. The ending is one of the most haunting in cinema history. If you appreciate horror that works entirely through psychology, this is essential. Cure, 1997, Japan. Kiyoshi Kurosawa is one of the most important horror filmmakers of his generation, and Cure is his masterpiece. A detective investigates a series of seemingly unconnected murders, each committed by a different person with no apparent motive. It is a detective story on the surface. But what Kurosawa is really building underneath is something much harder to name. The film moves slowly, deliberately, and the dread accumulates in a way that feels almost invisible until it's too late. Japanese horror at its most restrained and most effective. Shutter, 2004, Thailand. Shutter is one of the most genuinely effective supernatural horror films to come out of Asia in the last 20 years. A photographer begins to notice strange shadows and figures appearing in his photographs after a traumatic accident. The film uses its central concept with real intelligence. The idea that photographs might capture something we can't see with the naked eye is deeply unsettling. And Shutter exploits that premise brilliantly. If you haven't discovered Thai horror yet, this is the perfect starting point. I Saw the Devil, 2010, South Korea. Before we start for this entry, I would like to acknowledge that this film contains graphic violence. It is not for everyone, but it is crafted with extraordinary intention and skill. I Saw the Devil is one of the most technically accomplished Korean films ever made. A special agent hunts the man responsible for a horrific crime, but the film is far more interested in exploring what the pursuit of revenge does to the pursuer than in delivering straightforward genre thrills. The lead performances are extraordinary. Kim Ji-woon directs with a precision and a visual intelligence that elevates every scene. This is a film that challenges you and rewards you simultaneously. Approach it knowing what it is. A genuinely serious piece of filmmaking that happens to be very difficult to watch. Terrified, 2017, Argentina. Terrified is one of the scariest supernatural horror films of the modern era. Full stop. 3 houses on a Buenos Aires street begin experiencing terrifying paranormal events simultaneously. What makes Terrified so effective is its complete lack of sentimentality. It is purely and unapologetically a horror film, designed to frighten you from the first scene to the last. Demian Rugner has an extraordinary instinct for when and how to deliver a scare. If you want international horror that doesn't hold back, Terrified is going to deliver everything you're looking for. Speak No Evil, 2022, Denmark. This film is genuinely disturbing and deals with deeply uncomfortable themes. It is not an easy watch, but it is extraordinary filmmaking. Speak No Evil is one of the most uncomfortable viewing experiences in recent horror, and that discomfort is entirely intentional and entirely earned. A Danish couple accepts a holiday invitation from a Dutch couple they met briefly while travelling. What begins as social unease builds into something genuinely horrifying. The film is a precise and devastating examination of politeness, compliance, and the social codes that stop us from trusting our instincts. Christian Taftrup directs with extraordinary control. This is horror that gets under your skin in a way that stays with you for a very long time. The Medium, 2021, Thailand. The Medium is one of the most genuinely devastating horror films of the last decade. Shot in a documentary style, it follows a film crew documenting a female shaman in rural Thailand whose niece begins displaying increasingly disturbing behaviour. The film builds with extraordinary patience, and when it finally unleashes what it has been building toward, the effect is overwhelming. Banjong P. Santana-kun, who also directed Shutter, demonstrates a complete mastery of horrorcraft here. The medium is an experience that is very hard to shake. Coffee Table 2022, Spain. Coffee Table deals with deeply distressing subject matter. This is genuinely one of the most difficult films on this list to watch. Please approach with caution and full awareness. Coffee Table is one of the most audacious and genuinely difficult horror films of recent years. A couple purchases a coffee table against the wife's wishes, and what follows is a sustained exercise in dread, guilt, and psychological horror that is unlike almost anything else in the genre. Kai Casas builds tension with a precision that is almost unbearable. This is not a film for everyone, and that is not a criticism. It is a film that takes real creative risks and executes them with complete conviction. If you can approach it on its own terms, it is extraordinary. Exhuma 2024, South Korea. Exhuma is one of the most accomplished recent entries in Korean horror, a genre that continues to produce some of the most interesting and technically brilliant horror filmmaking in the world. A team of shamans and feng shui experts are hired to move the grave of a wealthy family's ancestor, and what they uncover goes far beyond anything they anticipated. Jang Jae-hyun builds the film's mythology with remarkable confidence, and the result is a supernatural horror experience that feels genuinely fresh. If you want to see where Korean horror is going right now, Exhuma is essential viewing. When Evil Lurks 2023, Argentina. This film is extremely intense with disturbing imagery throughout. Approach with caution, but know that it is one of the most remarkable horror films in years. When Evil Lurks is the most talked about international horror film in years, and for very good reason. Set in a remote rural community in Argentina, two brothers discover something deeply wrong with a neighbouring farm, and a chain of events begins that cannot be stopped. Demian Rugner returns with a film that operates by its own brutal, internal logic. And that consistency is what makes it so genuinely terrifying. The rules of this world are different from anything you've seen before, when Evil Lurks announces itself as a major work of horror cinema from the very first scene. So those are 10 essential international horror films from around the world, and every single one of them is worth your time if it sounds right for you. International horror rewards curiosity and an open mind. The films that challenge you the most are often the ones that stay with you the longest. Start wherever feels right. The Vanishing and Shutter are great entry points, and When Evil, Lurks, and Exhuma represent where international horror is right now. Drop your favourite international horror film in the comments. I genuinely want to know what's out there that I haven't seen. Subscribe to Classic Projection for more horror and thriller content every Thursday, and I'll see you in the next one.